Yo, what's up, guys? MMA analyst here to make a video for UFC 162. Now, I make a fair warning. This video is not exactly a regular prediction video. I'm only going to talk about the main event. I'm going to quickly make my picks for the other one, and then we're going to just discuss the situation that is basically potentially my last video. All right. So, with that being said. Alright, I'm picking Frankie Edgar over Charles Oliveira. I think I'm going to go with Roger Gracie, actually, over Tim Kennedy. Mark Munoz over Boach. Cub Swanson over Seaver. Although, if you're looking to bet on an underdog, that's a good underdog right there in Dennis Seaver. I'm picking Chris Lieben, Park, Gonzaga over Herman. I'm picking Barbosa over Oliveira. Basinski and Mike Pierce. All right, so that's the whole card. It's an average card, so whatever, whatever. Main event, Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman. All right, now, here's the problem, folks. This is the main problem that I have, and just in general. Chris Weidman's 9 wins and 0 losses, okay? He is the number 1 contender, but should somebody like Chris Weidman actually be the number 1 contender? A solid win over Mark Munoz, Damian Maia, Tom Law. Like, those are basically his first 2 fights, to be honest. Like, he has wins over Tom Lawler, not ranked, Jesse Bongfeld, Alessio Sakara. He has a win over Uriah Hall back in the day. He came out of, came into the UFC at 4-0. Since then, has gone on a 5-fight winning streak, with his biggest wins being over Damian Maia, which was an extremely boring fight. He took the fight late notice. He was tired. They gassed. I understand. And then he beat Mark Munoz. He destroyed Mark Munoz, who is really a good wrestler with heavy hands, but he's no champion. And then, boom, the title shot. Now, I applaud the UFC for recognizing that Chris Weidman is the number 1 contender and not falling for the, WWE aspect, which is, we want to go for the biggest possible fight. So they've actually kind of, in a way, treated it as a sport in a sense that, you're the number 1 contender, you're going to get the title shot. That often doesn't happen. And I understand, and, props to the UFC for that. My problem, though, is that he is actually the number 1 contender. That's my problem with pretty much MMA right now, which is that, the number 1 contender is a guy who's on a 5-fight winning streak, who beat 3, mid-tier fighters, beat Damian Maia in an extremely lackluster performance, and then, handle business against Mark Munoz, and then he gets to fight Anderson Silva, who is the number 2 most popular fighter in MMA? His fight against Mark Munoz, where was that on the card? This guy is not, he has a fan base now, because he's the Great White Hope. Everybody that wanted Anderson to lose to Chael Sonnen, now they've all shifted their support to Chris Weidman. And if he loses, and when he loses, then Chris Weidman will be forgotten again. The UFC has done a great job hyping this into making you believe that, Chris Weidman has a chance, which he actually does. So I guess maybe they're just informing you that this guy, even though you don't care about him, and even though he's not, a big name fighter, and even though, a few fights ago he was on the undercard, even though all of that, he still is a worthy contender of Anderson Silva. And basically, because of the fact that he's a young, strong wrestler, he is a worthy contender when it comes to skill versus skill, but not name versus name. Anderson Silva's a headliner. He's pay-per-view draw. He's got the longest win streak in the UFC. He has defended the title more times than anybody else in a row. He is the pound-for-pound #1 fighter. He's all those things, but the UFC cannot find him a suitable named and also, legitimate #1 contender. And that's my main issue. And I'm going to just move right on to it. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I mean, it's simple. Anderson Silva is better, on the feet. He's got amazing hands. He's got amazing distance. He's got, that accuracy. He's all that. Chris Weidman wants to get Anderson on his back. If Chris Weidman wins this fight, it's going to be by taking Anderson to the ground over and over again. And by laying on him. Chris Weidman wants to, try and, wind up for these big punches. That's distance. There's a reason why when fighters getting close with each other and they want to keep position, they don't throw knockout blows. Because the knockout blows is what causes the distance so that the defender can get his hands in, wrap up the arms, take a little breather, maybe get back to his feet. You throw a big punch, get the underhook, duck under, all of a sudden you're working your way back to the feet. Chris Weidman, once he gets that fight to the ground, he's got to hold him down. He can't afford to try and knock out Anderson Silva on the ground, as strong as Anderson Silva's chin is. So at the end of the day, when he gets Anderson Silva down, it's going to be Christmas. You know what I mean? And you don't want Christmas to end early, because you want to open up all your gifts at once. Take your time. So he's going to stay there, control the position, and be a lot less aggressive than he normally is. And if he can do that for 5 rounds in a row, he'll win. If he can't, he'll lose. I think Anderson Silva will win. It takes one mistake from Chris Weidman. It takes one move at any given moment. Anderson Silva can end the fight. He won't be submitting Chris Weidman off his back like he was able to Chael Sonnen. If Weidman takes him, to the 4th and the 5th round and he's been on top of him the entire time, I'm not crossing my fingers for that Hail Mary win. Chris Weidman, the one big difference between Chael Sonnen and everybody else that's ever faced Anderson Silva is Chael Sonnen was not afraid. He ran in, he was aggressive, he got close, he shut down the distance, he didn't allow Anderson Silva to dance, when Anderson comes out there and he's just, gauging, and then all of a sudden he starts hearing that music, and now he's ready to go, and now he's taunting you, and at that point it's over. Because as a fighter, you're like, oh, shoot. Damn, I missed my opportunity. It's over. But, Chael Sonnen just ran in there like, get your ass to the ground. And Chris Weidman, I don't think he has that in him. He's got strong enough hands and decent enough stand-up that he thinks that he can set up the takedown. And he can't. You can't set up the takedown with Anderson. You got to just take him down. So he's thinking, okay, I got that power. If I can... set it up, take it. No, you got to just rush in there. All right? Anyways, I'm thinking Anderson's going to catch him in that moment of thinking that he can fight on the feet. And once Anderson gets comfortable, it's over. So I think that's going to happen. I think Anderson's going to reach his comfort level in the 2nd round and finish the fight. Anyways, back to why, this might be my last video. First things first, if Anderson loses, I don't know if I can even handle that. You know what I mean? There's just been too much craziness happening in MMA. A lot of fans, they're like fans of the UFC and they're not aware of or they believe the stuff that Dana White's telling them. And I've watched enough MMA and seen behind the scenes enough and talked to enough fighters to know that the actual situation in MMA when it comes to fighter pay, fighter future, all that stuff is whack for like 95% of the fighters. And it's kind of getting to the point where, that's affecting the sport. These guys can't, become the athletes they need to become because they're working a 9 to 5, and then they're going and training after work. Stuff like that's whack. And the biggest problem I'm having, because of all of this is, you take a look, and I know other sports have been around for a lot longer. But like I said, the other sports also pay their athletes enough money so that they can improve and so that they can be the best and so they can draw the best athletes into their sport. And the MMA, and most importantly the UFC, which is able to actually pay everybody a lot more without hurting in any way. $1 billion, $2-3 billion company that pays its fighters annually around $60 million. You do the math. If every fighter combined under Zuffa combined gets around $60 million in a year, and the UFC is worth, $2-3 billion, you do the math. And then not to mention that 60 million, like 40 million of that is like a few of them. When I say a few, I mean like the majority of the fighters are making very little. So it's kind of like society, the top 2% own 90%, that kind of thing. It's like that. Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, Shogun, Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos, BJ Penn, whenever he decides to fight. Like, those guys are the 200K and up fighters. Everybody else is getting, 80 and lower, maybe 100, whatever the situation is. And then you take taxes and everything they have to pay and whatever. These guys end up making, either they're fighting for $30,000 a fight and then they end up taking home 8. Or they're fighting for $50,000 a fight and they end up taking home 20. And then they might fight 3 times a year. So that's $60,000 maybe a year if you make $50,000 a fight. How are you supposed to be a world-class athlete on that? Anyways, because of all of this stuff that's happening with the best athletes not going to MMA, with the athletes that are pretty good at MMA unable to actually focus on their craft, you have situations like this, where Chris Weidman is the legitimate #1 contender when he belongs nowhere near Anderson Silva, because there should be a more popular, more skilled Chris Weidman. That's my problem, all right? My problem is that it's just like, you look at the draft every single year in other sports, and you have, 50, 60 guys that, well, these are the top 10, but we can take any one of the 30. There's like 4 rounds of the draft, and there's 60 in each round, and at the end of the day, it's just new talent, and then they're nurtured, and they're getting better, and then when the old guys get old, they retire because there's no more lane for them, and then the new guy steps in, or the new class steps in, and then those guys take over, but that's not happening right now. A lot of people looking right now, but what's really happening is the old guys are either not retiring because they can actually still compete with 90% of the division. Like Vanderlei Silva, he's not old, but I mean, like, fighter wise, his career, he's way past his prime. Shogun, way past his prime. All these guys that have been fighting for so long and they're way past their prime, they're still, like, Shogun is still top 7. Shogun shouldn't be top 7. There should be a whole bunch of John Joneses that showed up. But because of the way the sport's set up, you got one John Jones, then you got a Gustafsson, who's like a quarter as good as John Jones. Then you got a Phil Davis, who's like, a quarter as good as John Jones. So then you just have a bunch of average, decent fighters who are fighting the old guys who used to be the man. And then there's the king, and that happens in every division. There's the king, then there's the contenders, which really don't have much of a chance of beating the king, and then there's these other guys who will never really be a contender unless all the contenders have been beat by the king, and that's kind of where you have Chris Weidman in this situation. Anyways, how often do I end up watching top-level MMA from both sides? How many fights? Let's say there's 10 fights on a card. How many of those fights will you actually say, you know what? Not this was a good fight, but that was top-level MMA. How many times? You know what I mean? I think the number is way too low. Like, how many times do you watch an NBA game and say that was world-class basketball level? Every game. Yeah, sometimes they'll make mistakes, but the skill on the court, every single game, you will get world-class basketball level. You're not going to get college basketball level in an NBA. You know, even if they have a bad game, they're still better than college basketball level. Like, oh, he's shooting off today. Doesn't matter. It's still better. Right? How many times do I watch MMA and go, man, that's some around the corner MMA I'm watching. I'm watching some, like, train 2 years at the corner store MMA. That's what I'm watching right now. I see that way too often. Way too often. In the UFC, in the biggest league. You know, I see like bootleg MMA all over the place. And every now and then, and I'm not talking Anderson Silva versus Anderson Silva, which you get in every other sport, by the way. You know, so in MMA, that's too much to ask for. But I'm talking just give me, you know, Jacare versus Damian Maia. Just give me that level. You know what I mean? Which is like two great mixed martial artists. Just give me that. Give me, you know, Nick Diaz versus Carlos Condit. How many times do I see that? I don't need GSP versus GSP. Just give me Josh Koscheck versus Fitch. How often? I've seen these fights before or whatever, but not that one, but I'm saying that level. How often do we see that level where you truly have fighters that are at a certain level that are facing each other? How often do we see that? How often do we see GSPs versus GSPs? We never see those. Those are called super fights. In other sports, super fights happen every single day. They happen in the playoffs. They happen, you know, non-stop. But in MMA, a super fight's a fight between two guys that are so good that they can only face each other, and we don't even get that. So I'm just kind of frustrated in general with the state of MMA and where I see it going. Am I still going to watch? Yeah, I'm going to still be watching. You know what I mean? I'm still going to watch. No, but I don't think I can make videos about it or spend a lot of time, you know, getting frustrated about it. You know what I mean? So I just got to sit back and enjoy the sport and be like, all right, you know what I mean? When all these fighters start retiring in a few years and they're all broke as hell and whatever the situation, then, you know what I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? I'm just going to be like, they're grown men. They're not really in control because they, you know, you're a fighter. You got bills, so you can't exactly say I'm going to not fight because I got to pay bills, you know what I mean? So they got wife, they got kids, you know, they got whatever they got to do. They got a house, you know, all that stuff. So not to mention the guys that really need to really stick together would be the guys that get paid millions anyway. So they're not going to stop fighting because this guy over here only gets paid $6,000. So, I mean, it is what it is. MMA, you know, I made the video already about what is needed to keep MMA from becoming stale. I'll just put it like this. If the best if the best athletes in the world were fighting the best athletes in the world, think about what a fight would look like in the UFC. You would have Georges St-Pierre, who's out there to fight somebody as good as Georges St-Pierre. So now, normally Georges St-Pierre says, I'm going to take him down because he can't beat me when I'm on top of him. And he can't stop my takedowns. Or, I'm going to keep him on the feet because I don't feel comfortable in his guard, and he can't beat me on the feet because he's not a well-rounded fighter. What if Georges St-Pierre fought Georges St-Pierre's skill level? I'm going to take him down. Oh, I can't. Damn. Okay, I got to stay on my feet. Why? Because he can stuff my takedowns. Or if I take him down, he's not going to get gassed in the first round because he is a world-class athlete who trains at world-class facilities with world-class training partners, you know, like every other sport. So I'm going to go take this guy down. Georges St-Pierre, go take him down. Boom, can't take him down. Okay, we're back to the feet. But guess what? Georges St-Pierre knew this. So what happens? Georges St-Pierre worked on his striking. So now Georges St-Pierre, the real one, is like a better striker, just as good as wrestling, great cardio. The guy he's fighting, he knows I can do what Georges St-Pierre can do, so he works on his striking, he works on his ground game, he works on his cardio. Now, instead of Georges St-Pierre going out there and taking down people and laying them for 25 minutes, Georges St-Pierre is in a fight now. Now, he goes over to fight somebody, boom, takedown, stuff. Ah, damn, they're on the fight, feet moving. They're doing their thing. These are great boxers, killing it. Okay, boom, oh, got a takedown. Other guy's, cool, I'm cool, I'll get back to my feet. Oh, Georges St-Pierre gets taken down. Shifts, the shift swing, right? That's a fight. That's what we're talking about. I'm talking about fights. between the best athletes in the world. You know, Anderson Silva goes out there against who? Anderson Silva, you know, the fake one, the one that doesn't exist because, you know, there's no other Anderson Silva. Unlike in NBA where there's like Kobe, LeBron, and then all these other cats that are all up there, you know, Tim Duncan, 5 rings, all those guys. These guys don't exist in MMA. So Anderson Silva goes out there. Boom, boom. What does he do? He's boxing, he's boxing. Now he knows that this guy's just as good a striker as he is, so instead of just going out there and showboating and being able to do whatever he does, he's got to really pay attention. And he knows the guy's not just going to go for a takedown, so it's not obvious, I'm just going to stand back and wait for a takedown and try and stuff it. No. He's going to have to actually worry about getting hit. So now he's worried about getting hit. He's, you know, Anderson Silva's doing his thing. You know, Quasi-Anderson, he's over there doing his thing. These guys are working on like it's a different sport. It's a totally different sport. If you have the best athlete versus the best athlete. If you have George St. Pierre versus George St. Pierre. I'm not saying exactly George, but, you know, somebody that's as good as George. If you have, like, somebody that's as good as Anderson. If you have 5 John Joneses who are all athletic, strong, you know, talented individuals in MMA, then when John Jones goes up to the fight, he knows this is serious. I can't just take this man down when I want. So anyways, that's my problem. That's not what I'm getting. You know what I mean? I'm getting Anderson Silva versus 9 guys who can't touch him. I'm getting George St. Pierre against 12 guys who can't touch him. Then all of a sudden, this guy shows up out of nowhere, wins 2 decent fights, and now he is the #1 contender to fight Anderson Silva, #1 pound for pound. And what makes it worse is the MMA fans, who are for the most part retarded, are rooting for this guy, Weidman, just because they hate Anderson Silva. Why do they hate Anderson? I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't like LeBron James, so maybe it just has to do with, you know, I don't know. You know, I don't even know why I don't like LeBron James. Maybe I need to relook at that. But anyways, the point is, MMA needs some growing up quickly, or it's going to get mad boring really quick. And when something like this is a niche sport and it gets boring and doesn't grow, it actually doesn't just stay still, it goes away. So anyways, before I, you know, make videos for the rest of my life and then eventually be like, look guys, the sport died or whatever, I'm just going to step away from videos, watch the sport, be a fan, you know, be a fan, do my thing, and then every now and then, you know, if George St. Pierre fights Anderson Silva, or if some new cat shows up, or if something happens great in MMA, like they decide that they're going to give these people, you know, a retirement fund so that when they retire at 38, you know, and they've had 20 fights in the UFC or something like that, that it's not like, whoop, see you later, buddy, you know what I mean? So maybe when things start to get better, or when the sport starts to actually evolve, not just expand. You know, expanding is good, but evolving is good as well. So when it starts to evolve, maybe I'll come back and start talking again or whatever, whatnot. In the meantime, I'm just going to watch this fight, UFC 162. I'm going to hope Anderson wins. Win or lose, I'll do a recap video. And if y'all don't like the video, hey, what can I say? I feel like I'm saying the most real stuff ever, you know what I mean? So this is real, no pulling punches, none of that, all right? Anyways, there you go. MMA, it's important. It is, and sometimes, you know, without sounding all whack stuff, sometimes when you love something, you just gotta, you know, sit back a little bit, you know what I mean? I don't know what the exact phrase is, but I'm not let it go. I'm not letting it go. I'm just gonna, like, back up a little bit and see what's really good, all right? So there you go. Thank you, everybody who's ever watched, subscribed, anything, any views, any support. I appreciate it. And, you know, I've been doing this since, like, 2007. You know, my other channel had, like, mad videos, like 150, 200 videos. This channel's got, like, 100 videos. It is what it is, right? It's been a part of my life. I'm not done with it, but I'm definitely taking one of those real breaks. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be back, most likely, at some point. But I'm definitely going to take this break. War Anderson Silva on Saturday. You know, long live MMA. Let's hope something happens so that 10 years from now, we're not all looking back, or 20 years from now, we're not all looking back at something that we all used to love that really doesn't exist anymore because I couldn't sustain, given the current situation that it's in. Anyways, Peace.